The Constitution protects citizens, not illegals, non-citizens. No, that's not correct. You're wrong. The Constitution does protect non-citizens. How do I have this conversation with people who are too stupid to understand this? It does.
Mr. Secretary, a Turkish student in Boston was detained and handcuffed on the street by plainclothes agents. A year ago, she wrote an opinion piece about the Gaza war. Could you help us understand what the specific action she took led to her visa being revoked?
Yeah,
and what was your State Department's role in that process?
We revoked her visa. It's an F1 visa, I believe. We revoked it, and here's why. And I'll say it again. I said it everywhere. Let me be abundantly clear, okay? If you go apply for a visa right now, anywhere in the world, let me just send this message out. If you apply for a visa to enter the United States and be a student, and you tell us that the reason why you're coming to the United States is not just because you want to write op-eds, but because you want to participate in movements that are involved in doing things like vandalizing universities, harassing students, taking over buildings, creating a ruckus, we're not going to give you a visa. If you lie to us and get a visa and then enter the United States and with that visa participate in that sort of activity, we're going to...
First and foremost, participating in protest movements is entirely separate than like vandalizing state property or whatever. Even that is not a high enough bar to clear for deportation. I know that these guys act like they are the standalone deity that chooses, that picks and chooses if they think it's appropriate. It's not. Deportation is an inherently violent act. The revocation of someone's student visa and the subsequent deportation of a person needs to meet an incredibly high standard. This is why it has to go through the courts. The reason why they don't want to do that is because most judges will go, yeah, we're not doing this. Are you out of your fucking mind? We're not going to deport someone for writing an op-ed. That is a First Amendment violation. Most judges would even say, we're not going to deport a student on a Fulbright scholarship in the United States of America if they were actually breaking state property. I hate how much the boundary has moved. I hate how much the middle ground is so permanently slammed into right-wing fascist thought at this point that people are even entertaining this. It would be very difficult to judge shop. It would not be impossible, but most judges would not allow, no matter what their background is, even if they're a Bush-era judge or even a Trump judge, most judges would not allow a student visa to be revoked and a student to be deported for writing an op-ed. Actually, I would go so far as to say it would be very hard to find a single judge that would be on board with that. Most judges would not be on board with deporting a student visa for even vandalism. That is insane. That is completely insane. Like, unless a person who has retained a student visa is doing a heinous crime, you're not going to find many judges that are on board with deporting them and revoking their citizenship. This is an act that the government would do for very specific cases. It has to be a heinous crime. It is ridiculous. So the position of the Trump-Vance administration and every member of Congress, unless they explicitly say otherwise, is quite literally, you do not have guaranteed free speech rights in America if you can't say things. If you say things they don't like, that is the headline. That is precisely what's going on here, okay? Speech is not a crime until the Supreme Court decides on eroding the First Amendment for non-citizens, and then potentially citizens as well. Free speech is not a crime. Hate speech in and of itself is not a crime. Hate speech accompanying another crime can be. Hate crimes are separate than hate speech. If a foreigner came into U.S. soil with a student visa and wrote a piece of paper, and this is not a moral equivalence to anti-Zionist speeches or a demand to divest from Israel at all. I'm talking about something that I consider to be truly abhorrent, morally repugnant, and inherently violent too, like an advocacy for violence. If a foreign student on a student visa came to the United States of America and wrote for Stormfront, you still cannot deport them. That is literally anti-free speech. That's it. That's crazy. Revoking anyone's legal status and deporting them specifically for what they have written, theoretical arguments, is a terrifying violation of the First Amendment. Just because there's not enough movement against this kind of erosion of constitutional protections, and it's seemingly something that they are doing, that they're following, does not change that reality. And if they do change the laws, then I will fight against that as well. As it stands right now, there's two arguments. There's an argument for the morality. Should we be allowed to deport whoever we want? And the answer is no. And then there's an argument for the legality. It is currently, as it stands, illegal. That is why they're trying to change the precedent. That is why they're trying to set a precedent to make it legal. What the White House is trying to do in this situation is completely untested ground, untested territory. They want to open up the faucet of pain, and people are falling. People are genuinely sleepwalking in that direction right now. The Trump administration is goose-stepping. The Democrats are either sleepwalking or sheepdogging towards fascism. I am not even remotely being hyperbolic on this. This is not an exaggeration.
We're going to take away your visa. And once you've lost your visa, you're no longer legally in the United States, and we have a right, like every country in the world has a right, to remove you from our country. So it's just that simple.
Marco Rubio is trying to conflate the standards that are rigid and also shouldn't exist for the record, but the standards that are rigid for giving someone a visa with someone who has already gotten a visa and is inside of the United States boundaries. Citizens and non-citizens alike have a different set of standards when they are entering the United States of America versus once they are inside of the United States of America. Do you understand? If you are an American citizen right now, Customs and Border Patrol, according to TikTok, I see so many TikToks on this, and according to immigration lawyers as well, are even searching and violating the Fourth Amendment rights of even American citizens. Because right before you enter the United States border, you have a different set of standards. Just like there's a different set of standards for who the American government chooses to give a visa to versus how they can remove that visa. Just like there's a different set of standards between coming into the country versus once you have passed the boundary, once you are inside of the country. You cannot conflate the two.
I think it's crazy. I think it's stupid for any country in the world to welcome people into their country that are going to go to your universities as visitors. They're visitors. And say, I'm going to your universities to start a riot. I'm going to your universities to take over a library and harass people. I don't care what movement you're involved.
Are you not scared that ICE comes for you and your family? No, because I'm an American citizen and so is my family. Now, the problem here is if BORTAC was coming after me, or because they're, it's a constitutional free zone. Los Angeles is, many parts of the country is. What you need to understand is if the American government has already moved beyond students and are now going after American citizens, if they're going after American citizens, like natural born U.S. citizens like myself, we've already moved so far beyond the problem that I'm trying to explain here to many others. We've moved past that. If there is like a permission structure of who you can target right now to open up the floodgates, to open up the floodgates of harm and to start blackbagging anyone and everyone that you consider a political dissident, Erdogan style, right? Well, it starts with undocumented migrants. Then it starts with documented migrants that have visas. And then it moves on to legal permanent residents with green cards. Then it moves on to recently naturalized citizens that you can denaturalize. Then it moves on to natural born U.S. citizens. And then it moves on to natural born U.S. citizens who also have the legal means and the financial means to defend themselves. I'm here. If we got here, it's over for virtually everyone in this chat. Okay, I'm here. I'm on the last stage. That's why I don't like to talk about this too much. I don't want to, center the conversation around myself and my fears or whatever because that doesn't shake my integrity. And more importantly than that, beyond the fact that that does not shake my integrity, that doesn't stop me from saying what I'm saying, and it shouldn't stop you either, because we still at this stage have fucking rights. It also means it's far too late. They're going after some of the least protected people while trying to conflate like pre-existing rules for different aspects, like and trying to retroactively apply standards that don't exist. That's the reason why they're going after student visa holders. And that's the reason why they went after Mahmoud Khalil. They didn't go after Mahmoud Khalil because he had a green card. They went after Mahmoud Khalil because they thought he was on a student visa. But when they found that Mahmoud Khalil actually had a green card, they just kind of kept going along with it. But the first round of deportations was always going to be student visa holders. That is how you set a new precedent. Revocation of student visas and subsequent deportation for no crimes whatsoever other than a direct First Amendment protected, constitutionally protected exercise of free speech. Once you set the new precedent that you can go after people and that free speech doesn't matter for non-citizens, and once you set the precedent that due process doesn't matter, because these things, the deportations work side by side, and it's not like this is something that they're hiding. Nayib Bukele has literally said he would entertain the notion of having American citizens in the El Salvador CICOT prison as well, the slave labor camp. Once they erode the constitutional protections by entering the argument with, oh, well, these guys are terrorists, they're Hamas, they will use it on newer targets. They will expand. They will expand into new territory. You sound nervous, pal. Again, I'm not gonna repeat the point again, but brother, if you think that your life will improve if this government deports me or revokes my citizenship, you are a delusional moron. By the time the government gets to someone like myself, you will have already been melted for biomatter. Are you really against CICOT? It holds the most inhumane gang members that terrorize citizens? Yes, I am. Do you want to know why I am? Because there's no fucking due process. Read any human rights report on CICOT and you will quickly understand that not every single person that is trapped in those prisons are actually MS-13 gang members. They literally round people up and then do not afford them a trial or a day in court, 800 people at a time. They go boom, boom, boom. You're a terrorist. You're MS-13. And then they put them in this permanent slave labor camp. Also, no matter how violent someone is, no matter how inhumane or how big of a terrorist someone is, you still shouldn't be able to torture them. What are we talking about? This is what I mean. This is what I mean. The Overton window is so right wing. The Overton window is so slammed to the right that we're just like talking about it where it's like, well, you know, those guys are terrorists, dude. We should be able to torture them. We should be able to do whatever we want to them. It's like, what are you saying? No, of course not. No. I feel like 30 years ago, if you were to say something like that, people would be like, I don't know about that. Even in America, there were protests against Guantanamo Bay. There were protests against enhanced interrogation. The very fact that this became a legal case that went all the way up to the Supreme Court implies that there was enough people that were criticizing the Bush administration for doing torture. The very fact that they had to create a legal process where they didn't call it torture but called it enhanced interrogation implies that there was people going, that's not allowed. What are you doing? You can't do that. Once you set the precedent, it's over. And then you move on to the next stage. This is precisely what I'm talking about. Administrations prior to this that either accelerated this process in terms of warrantless arrests, in terms of black bagging people, sending them to Gitmo, in terms of like warrantless surveillance, like mass surveillance in the American security apparatus, all of these administrations moved the needle into this direction so that the Trump administration could create this process and that a lot of Americans would not look at this and go, the basic human rights for some people? No, thank you. I don't care about it. This is where we're at now. It is terrifying. People read history books and don't even entertain the notion that it can happen here or it is happening right now. What? So you and the human rights advocates are against it, but the majority of the citizens that now have one of the safest countries aren't? I don't know, seems contrarian. Okay, dude. The majority of Germans thought that like it was good that the Jews were being sent to concentration camps. Did that make it appropriate or okay? Or do we now have the benefit of hindsight to look back at that and go, maybe that wasn't the best idea? The fuck are you talking about? One of the safest countries. God damn, dude. How do you not understand that MS-13 is a violent gang, okay? Having said that, basically El Salvador and the government under Nayib Bukele turned into another gang. That's what they're doing. They're doing MS-13 shit. No, he's not talking. This chatter is not talking about America when he says one of the safest countries. He's talking about El Salvador. And I don't think it's safe if the police can just come and black bag you under the suspicion that you're MS-13 aligned, okay? And then you and 800 other people that they've kidnapped are sitting in front of a judge who's wearing a balaclava and decides that all 800 of you are MS-13 members. They make you, they disappear you. This is shit that you see in the movies. This is shit that you're like, oh, wow, I can't believe how fascist and authoritarian this place is. No, there needs to be a process. The reason why the police are supposed to be treated differently than a gang, or governments are supposed to be treated differently than a violent criminal gang, is because of rules and laws and standards that are supposed to apply unconditionally to every single person. If you just operate a slave labor camp and black bag random people, now you're MS-13, or maybe even worse than MS-13, as a matter of fact. What are you talking about? You've become the criminal at that point. It's just common sense. You are delusional. Were the Jews gang members murdering people? Are you out of your mind? You are delusional. Were the Jews gang members murdering people? Wait, what? Do you think the gay hairdresser is actually a terrorist, or was he sent to El Salvador simply because he is brown? Was the soccer soccer coach murdering people? No. Do you think the Nazis were just like, oh, Jews are actually wonderful and that's why we're sending them to concentration camps? No, dumbass. They dehumanized them and lied about Jews. They dehumanized and lied about them until other dumb like you believed it. There's got to be a reason for it, right? This is how it works. They change the laws. Criminals will go to jail. Yeah, being Jewish was a crime in Nazi Germany. That's my point. The fuck? The same process of denaturalization took place there too. Jews were not seen as like real Germans. They were just non-Germans. The parallel is right in front of you. It's so shocking that you just can't understand it. So some MS-13 members shouldn't be in prison? No, that's not what I'm saying, you fucking morons. Oh my God. No, I'm saying that a shit ton of people that are put in torture prison right now in El Salvador, the CICOP prison, are not actually MS-13, but there's no process where you can verify that because they don't give a f. They just nab you off the street, they kidnap you, and they say, all right, you're MS-13 now, f you. How is this difficult to comprehend? And the American government is sending people without any evidence whatsoever. Like, Guys, I need you to understand something, okay? The Holocaust, when it was happening, was legal. When the German government was doing it, they literally did it legally. Slavery was legal. Abolishing slavery was illegal, okay? Freeing slaves, illegal. Slavery, legal. Holocaust, legal. Freeing concentration camps, illegal. Sheltering Jews, illegal. Understand that just because something is legal, just because a government says someone is illegal or is doing a crime doesn't mean that they actually did the crime. You need to understand this. You're totally right, but they weren't deported and executed for being Jewish initially. They were slandered as traitors and criminals until it was implicit to their understanding of Jewish people. Yes, no, that's why I said it didn't start off that way. It started off with dehumanization. That dehumanization is happening right now in real time in the United States of America for non-citizens, for documented and undocumented non-citizens alike. I'm going to give you two examples of some of the recent people that this administration has decided to deport to the CICOT slave labor camp. Here's the story of one of the men Kristi Noem sent there, a guy whose autism awareness tattoo got him interrogated by ICE officers who, despite an agent telling him he was clean, detained him and shipped him to this hellhole. This is from Aaron Reichlin Melnick, senior fellow at IMM Council, American Immigration Council. Okay? This is what happens when you abandon due process. Neri Alvarado with his brother Nelierson in 2023. Alvarado told Hernandez that an ICE agent had asked him if he knew why he had been picked up. Alvarado said he did not. Well, you're here because of your tattoos, the ICE agent said. According to Hernandez, we're finding and questioning everyone who has tattoos. The agent then asked Alvarado to explain his tattoos and for permission to review his phone for any evidence of gang activity. You're clean, the ICE officer told Alvarado after he complied, according to both Hernandez and Maria Alvarado. I'm going to put down here that you have nothing to do with Trendaragua. For reasons that remain unclear, Hernandez said that another official in ICE Dallas field office decided to keep Alvarado detained. This was his autism awareness tattoo. Hernandez, a U.S. citizen who moved to the United States from Venezuela nearly 3 decades ago, searched desperately for Alvarado when he didn't show up in his home country that weekend. He was nearly certain that Alvarado was in El Salvador when he first spoke to Mother Jones on Thursday. I have very few friends, he said. Very few friends, and I've been in this country for 27 years. I let Neri into my house because he's a stand-up guy, because you can tell when someone is good or bad. Later that day, on Alvarado's 25th birthday, Hernandez got confirmation that his friend was in El Salvador when CBS News published a list of 238 people now at CCOT. There's more to it. It doesn't end there. That's who you think should be sent to this slave labor camp. That's what you are advocating for. Do you think it's appropriate? Do you think this is right? Do you think we're actually making this country better? Another person that they did this to was a soccer coach. Another person that they did this to was a gay hairstylist and makeup artist. There are people with legal permanent residency status. There are people with proper documentation. There was a guy that they arrested, detained, and shipped out to El Salvador for having a Real Madrid-inspired tattoo that they claimed was Trendaragua. One of the other examples that they offered, the Department of Homeland Security itself offered these examples, was that he was doing this in a photo. Literally this. They said this was a gang sign. If they had real evidence that these people were monstrous criminals, they wouldn't have to violate due process. You understand? They know that they don't have any evidence. They don't want to have any evidence. They want to be able to do this expeditiously without any evidence whatsoever, without due process, because the entire purpose is to erode due process so they can do this to anyone and everyone they see fit. And if you can't comprehend why due process protects you, I don't know what to tell you. When there's no due process, that means, let's say you don't have your license on you. You get stopped. You get apprehended. You have no way of proving your innocence. You have no way of proving your citizenship. Before you know it, you're shipped off in chains to El Salvador. That is the reason why due process matters. Do you understand? I mean, this is it. Yeah. Consider this. 6 people in plainclothes approach you, and then people go, I'd ask why and listen to the reason. It's probably a good one, or they wouldn't have grabbed me. I don't think people understand how devastating this is and how this will inevitably hurt them. I don't know. People who think, no, I'll just follow the rules, lol, don't recognize that these are all people that were following the rules. We're talking about them right now. None of the people that have so far had their citizenship or had not their citizenship, sorry, their legal status revoked, have broken any rules. That's the entire reason why this is a precedent-setting moment. They are disappearing people and actively saying, we're doing this for no reason, and what are you going to fucking do about it? People literally need to relearn the basics, like how Adolf Hitler rose to power. Yeah, maybe. He's openly saying it, by the way. He's saying, like, there's no... I can do it for any reason I want.
Why would any country in the world allow people to come and disrupt? Now, we gave you a visa to come and study and get a degree, not to become a social activist that tears up our university campuses. And if we've given you a visa and then you decide to do that, we're going to take it away. I encourage every country to do that, by the way, because I think it's crazy to invite students into your country that are coming onto your campus and destabilizing it. We're just not going to have it. So we'll revoke your visa, and once your visa is revoked, you're illegally in the country and you have to leave. Every country in the world has a right to decide who comes in as a visitor and who doesn't. If you invite me into your home...
Yeah, except this country also has additional restrictions on what the government can and can't do, and you're trying to violate those restrictions. That's what the Constitution is supposed to do. Rules and regulations restrict regular citizens from behaving in ways that they want to, right? Because it might mean instability if people were just out doing what the government has decided is a crime. On the other hand, the United States Constitution is supposed to restrict the United States government, from behaving in ways that could harm you, as long as it's reasonable. The Constitution protects citizens, not illegals, non-citizens. No, that's not correct. You're wrong. The Constitution does protect non-citizens. How do I have this conversation with people who are too stupid to understand this? It does. You wanted to not protect illegals and you wanted to not protect them, but currently it does. And I think that's a good thing. Yes, the Constitution protects every human being on U.S. soil, documented and undocumented, citizens and non-citizens alike. Otherwise, you could just kill tourists. You know what I mean? You could do whatever you want. It's like, hey, oh, are you a tourist? Are you here on a tourist visa? Come here. I'm going to torture you. Like, what are you talking about? I guess that's where we're moving towards. And these dumbasses want that to happen. Tell me where you got this information for. Show me where it says in the Constitution that says non-citizen. It says person on U.S. soil. Persons on U.S. soil. Persons. You can imagine and envision that non-citizens are not persons, but they are. Okay? It doesn't say American citizens only. Eventually, the Supreme Court extended these constitutional protections to all aliens within the United States, including those who had entered unlawfully, declaring that aliens who have once passed through our gates, even illegally, may be expelled only after proceedings conforming to traditional standards of fairness encompassed in the due process of law. The court reasoned that aliens physically present in the United States, regardless of their legal status, are recognized as persons, guaranteed due process of the law by the 5th and 14th Amendments. Thus, the court determined, even one whose presence in this country is unlawful, involuntary, or transitory is entitled to that constitutional protection. Accordingly, notwithstanding Congress's indisputably broad power to regulate immigration, fundamental due process requirements notably constrain that power with respect to aliens within the territorial jurisdiction of the United States. Don't poop on me too hard. I'm French Canadian. Just looked it up. You're correct. My bad. That conversation that took place right there. I know the last paragraph, chatter. I'm going to get to it in a second. That conversation that took place right there is basically what every conversation with a conservative, no matter what nationality, ethnicity, background, age group, no matter what demographic or psychographic profile they have, as long as they are conservative, is the exact same conversation. If you have conservative people in your lives that you have talked to, you've already had this exact same moment where you just go, you're wrong. Here, let me explain it to you. At least that guy, ironically enough, being French Canadian, was like, okay, I was wrong. Most people don't even care that they're wrong. They just go, nope, they move on, do something different. They just move on to something different. They just go, all right, well, I still think they should die. Like, depending on how reactionary they are.
Because you say, I want to come to your house for dinner. And I go to your house and I start putting mud on your couch and spray painting your kitchen. I bet you're going to kick me out. But we're going to do the same thing if you come into the United States as a visitor and create a ruckus for us. We don't want it. We don't want it in our country. Go back and do it in your country. But you're not going to do it in our country.
This morning, a Tufts University graduate student is waking up in a detention facility in Louisiana. She was arrested by federal agents outside an off-campus apartment on Tuesday in Boston, and security video shows the moment that she was taken into custody by federal agents. Her name is Rumeysa Ozturk. She's from Turkey, a Fulbright scholar and a PhD student. Her attorney says she has a valid visa.
So I also want to talk about this aspect of it. Where is it? Martha Lincoln, associate professor at SFSU, wrote this thing that I thought was pretty interesting as well, because I also ironically applied for a Fulbright scholarship back in the day. I think I applied for Anne. I don't know where she is. I remember like visiting the Fulbright offices and talking to them about it back in the day. I didn't get it. But Fulbright as a scholarship is about like promoting, liberal values, ironically enough. And I think that's why it's like additionally horrifying, and there is this dark irony captured here. If this happened to an American student who wrote an op-ed while on Fulbright in Turkey, it would be an international incident. Congresspeople would demand the student be returned within the hour. Their intellectual, professional, and political and personal integrity would be defended. The student's cause would likely be further used to sanction and shame the Turkish government. It would be held up as evidence of the enduring American values of independence, freedom, and liberal democracy. The student would be treated as a standard bearer for those values. Fulbright would put out statements. The U.S. Embassy would put out statements. The White House would put out statements. The student would be out of Turkish custody very quickly and put on a plane home with a U.S. official. There would be huge ripple effects in Turkish-U.S. relations. But it's the other way around. Unfortunately for this talented, gentle, and principled young woman, an expert on child development and children's media, no one powerful pointing out how her treatment violates the liberties upheld by the United States and valorized by Fulbright. Ozturk's detention is especially sadly ironic because Fulbright is intended to be ambassadorial. Participants promote the supposed cultural and political values of the U.S. By expressing her convictions in an opinion essay, Ozturk was doing what a model Fulbrighter should. Even the most staid State Department functionary should be able to see the irony of a young Turkish PhD student being the one to teach Americans about freedom of speech and opinion. But in their absence, illustrated by her forcible extrajudicial detention for writing an essay. It's so crazy. Turkey closely monitoring the detention of Tufts students Rumeysa Ozturk. The Turkish embassy in Washington is closely monitoring the detention of Rumeysa Ozturk. The Turkish embassy is too busy, or the Turkish government is too busy destroying protesters in its own country right now, which is precisely the reason why they don't have time for this, for the record. Be deeply ironic if the Turkey government turned around and was like, how dare you do this, while they're literally doing this to its own citizens at the moment in Turkey at a rapid clip, for the record. So there's no solution to any of this. If everywhere is awful, what the do you do? Who do you go to? Vatandaşımızı vatanına dönsün. Burada her şey güllük gülistanlık. Kimse eleştiri gösteri yaptı diye içeri alınmıyor. Aynen. Like the inherent irony of the Turkish government saying, at this point, saying something along the lines of, how dare you actually detain someone illegally for simply expressing an opinion, is not lost on me. Especially considering that the Turkish government is doing just that right now, every single day. BBC correspondent Mark Lowen deported from Turkey after reporting on the protests over arrest of Istanbul mayor. And for the record, I need I need people that come in here and go, whoa, it's okay when Turkey's doing it. It's not okay when Turkey's doing it. It is completely unacceptable. That's my point. My point is, ironically enough, I watched the erosion of certain liberties under the 22 plus years of Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And then now I come to America in the time frame and I'm watching America also fall apart, Turkifying at an alarming rate, jokingly enough. I mean, obviously, this is inherently a very American thing to do, this kind of fascist shit, but still. Judge orders the Trump administration to preserve signal messages from March 11th to the 15th. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if they hit him on this. Oh, hold on. Let me finish the rest of it because, of course, the Supreme Court will still add qualifications, okay? Despite the fact that the constitutional protections extend to all aliens on U.S. soil, regardless of immigration status. The Supreme Court has also suggested the extent of due process protection may vary depending on the alien's status and circumstance. In various opinions, the court has suggested that at least some of the constitutional protections to which an alien is entitled may turn upon whether the alien has been admitted into the United States or developed substantial ties to this country. Thus, while the court has recognized that due process considerations may constrain the federal government's exercise of its immigration power, there is some uncertainty regarding the extent to which these constraints apply with regards to aliens within the United States. This is part of the reason why, for example, border apprehensions done by Customs and Border Patrol can lead to immediate deportation. In that process, they still go through some set of legal standards to see if there is a legal claim to asylum or whatnot, but it's a more expeditious process as opposed to an undocumented migrant or a documented migrant, a documented non-citizen living on U.S. soil for, 10 years, 15 years.